Headship does not equal leadership. Welcome back to scripture that's been used to harm you but shouldn't have, part 7. Last time I talked about Ephesians 5:22, wives submit to your husbands, which needs to be read in the context of the verse above. Everybody submit to each other. Wives submit to husbands and husbands submit to your wives. But people are wondering, what about the next verse, verse 23, that says that husbands are the head of wives? Certainly that implies male leadership, right? All right, so a couple things to get out of the way. First, the Bible never says men are the head of the household. There's nothing like that in the entirety of Scripture. The closest you get is 1 Timothy chapter 5 that says that women need to manage or lead their homes. Women do. The second thing we need to understand is that just like in English, the Greek word for head, kephale, can be used in 3 main ways. 1, it can be used for your cabeza, the place where your brain lives in the home of your beautiful, beautiful faces. 2, head can be used as a reference to leadership, like noted orphan Charles Entertainment Cheese is the head of the Chuck E. Cheese organization. And 3, this is where we need to pay attention, head can refer to the source or origin of a thing. We don't use this as much in English, but we still use it when we say to like the head or the headwaters of the Mississippi River. That third meaning, head as a source or origin, is what is happening in Ephesians 5 and in general whenever Paul refers to headship. Now you may be thinking, in what way are husbands the origin or sources of wives? So hang with me here. In the Greek, the word in Ephesians for husband and wife is just a generic Greek word for men and for women. And in the Jewish imagination, coming out of the creation narrative of Genesis 2 specifically, there was just the one human being, the Adam. And from the side of the Adam, God shapes the Isha, the first woman, corresponding to but different from the Adam. So the Adam is the source or origin material for the Isha, the woman. And Paul is using this not as an argument for hierarchy, but rather to challenge the cultural sexism and patriarchy that everybody was swimming in. Notice the actual language Paul uses when talking about what it means for husbands to be the head of wives. Husbands, love your wives, or more generically, men, love your women. How? Just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. That phrase, gave himself up for her, is the Greek word paradidomai, and it means to hand something over into someone else's authority or keeping. It's used in the Gospels for the handing over of money, to be handed over into prison, and for the action of Jesus being handed over to crucifixion. Are you listening? Paul says, yes, men, you are the head, the source, the origin of women according to Genesis 2. Therefore, you must be the same sort of head, source, or origin that Jesus is as head, source, or origin of the church. And the way that Jesus is the kephale, the head or the origin or the source of growth for the church, was not by executive leadership functions. It was not by Jesus's decision-making authority and power. Jesus was the head by the fact that he handed himself over for the church's sake, for the church's health, for her well-being. In the same way, then, men, you too should be the heads of wives, willing to offer up your bodies for the sake of the well-being of women. This is Paul's giant fuck you to sexism and patriarchy. Men who use their bodies to abuse, harm, harass, or endanger women are not acting like Jesus. Men who use their power and authority to keep women out of leadership, out of teaching, out of decision-making, they are acting entirely opposed to this passage. Rather, in any society or culture where women are pushed to the margins, kept out of the room where it happened, or made to feel inferior, less than, or unsafe in any way, the best way for a man to be Christ-like and to lean into their calling as head or kephale is to do everything in their power, including putting their own resources and bodies on the line, to protect, empower, and lift up women.